I have a couple of these throughout the garage, and for a 5-pound press, they were great. I'm going to do some creative work because I have more of these. So here's a dusty close-up of a dual dock from Inline Fab, and I like the dual dock because of the way it supports rather than the single dock. There's the dual dock, and then there's, I think this is called like the top edge dual dock, and because it offers much more support than just the standard dual dock. So what I'm going to do is do an edge top dual dock along with a standard dock for in between this rack. And these are, again, not heavy presses, but the Dillon and the Hornady are very heavy presses, so I'll show you what I'm going to do with that. So this was, as a test run, I had to trim about 1/8 of an inch off the 2x4 in order to fit in between the two sides of the rack. And for any other press, lightweight press, this would be fine. I mean, this is, I think, 1/4 inch, and that's pretty decent. The screws that come, the Dillon and the Hornady, I thought I would do something a little more creative, and I will show you what I'm going to do. So I'm going to take 3/8 inch, or excuse me, 3 inch by 3/16 of an inch, and this is probably the equivalent of what Dan has at Inline Fab. In fact, let me grab that. So I was right. Yeah, Dan's thickness of his steel is 3/16 for the dock. So my thought was I would cut this so that it sits between the posts. I would drill it. Actually, that's the correct way, but so this doesn't fall over, I'll just show it's gonna fall. And then I'm going to drill holes and have some washers, nuts and bolts, hold this in, probably put metal on both sides so that the wood is sandwiched between a whole lot of steel, so that the weight of the press won't be an issue at all. So today's task is to cut this to size and then drill some holes and go from there. So I've swapped out my standard blade for a special metal cutting blade, flat bar, and I am not going to try and cut this with the camera because Murphy's Law says things will go wrong. So back in a while. Alright, after I started to cut, I realized that should have gone vertical, so I flipped things around, mounted it vertical, and it cut through it pretty quickly and easily. Whole lot of sparks though, that's for sure. Now I'm going to grind off the edges. There are my 3 pieces. Front piece, back piece for the double dock, and back piece for the single, and I've beveled all the edges with the grinder, so everything is rounded and soft to the touch, or at least not sharp to the touch. And once again, that was flat bar, 3 inches by 36. Now I've got I think this is about a 21 inch. This is, I think, 9, and this is 6, so that would make my 36 or so, give or take a little bit. And what I'll probably do now is figure out how easy it's going to be to drill the holes for the bolts. I'm expecting some challenges there. This came out pretty good for a quickie kind of thing for reinforcement. So a little method to my madness. The reason this is so far over is because my first thought was I was going to do 3, and I wanted them spaced as far apart as possible to give the middle dock the best leverage. And I might still do that now that I've built this, and or maybe I'll go with the double dock, we'll see. But I'm not going to drill holes until I have the double dock, and because the steel frame is so close, I don't even know if that's going to clear it. We'll find out shortly. Same thing with the nut back here, which is why you'd only see the double washers on the center and not the side, because that line is essentially where the post is. So I'm going to mount this up and see what kind of resistance I get. All right, here's the finished product. If you recall, when I put this one in first, I was going to do a single dock and then a dual dock. And then I moved from a dual dock to a top ledge dual dock. But then when I was looking on Inline Fab's website on measurements, and I've got one buried in the garage as well, that's in another one of these racks, and it's only got one dual deck top ledge with two smaller presses. And when I read Inline Fab's measurements and comments about the dual dock, not being able to have a press wider than 8 inches. So if you have something that has bins on the side or roller handles or whatever, case feeder, yada yada. In fact, I think the website says don't put a case feeder because it's too heavy. Well, one of the reasons I went for this steel reinforcement was because I was concerned about the Dillon. The Dillon and Hornady's are a little beefier units, so putting a relatively heavy press is a concern. Putting something like this, the Lee APP, a non-issue, and won't do anything to either side of the mount. But if I was to put the dual dock, I was worried about the sizing issues for presses larger than, again, 8 inches wide. So this going from 3 to 2 with the reinforcement allows me to have two. I don't know that I would put two large presses here, but definitely one large press, or one press with a large footprint, to be able to have room and it be solid enough. So that project is done, and now it's just time to mount presses. Later, folks.